Hi everybody, it's Honest John. Now, we all remember Sarah Palin placing targets on the districts of Democrats that she didn't like. And then there was her "Don't Retreat, Reload" statement, which I believe she made on Twitter. Sharon Angle, during her campaign, talked about Second Amendment solutions. Ted Nugent got a visit from the Secret Service after threatening President Obama. Even John Boehner, who's fairly moderate for a Republican nowadays, said that if one Democratic congressman went back to his district, he would be a dead man. Ann Coulter recently made a joke that Meghan McCain should be killed. Here's a quote from Catherine Craybill, a GOP candidate for Virginia's House of Delegates. "We have a chance to fight this battle at the ballot box before we have to resort to the bullet box." William Kostick carried a gun outside an Obama town hall meeting, holding a sign that said, "It's time to water the tree of liberty." An editorial at the Newsmax website called for a coup. Mike Vanderboot, a regular commentator on Fox, encouraged his followers to break windows at Democratic campaign headquarters, and a number of windows were broken. Conservative blogger Solomon Farrell has called for Obama to be assassinated. J.W. Berry, a leader of the Oklahoma Tea Party, has threatened to launch 1,000 guerrilla attacks. And there have been statements by conservative radio talk show hosts like, "If ballots don't work, bullets will." And Glenn Beck, Limbaugh, Alex Jones, among others, often use language that sounds very much like threats of violence, or at least encouraging other people to act violently. There are a whole bunch of videos on YouTube of right-wingers making threats of violence over things like Obamacare and background checks and just general principles. Most recently, YouTube's Wild Bill for America said that he's recruiting members of special forces to threaten judges and prosecutors. And as we all know, a lot of members of the Tea Party routinely carry guns to their rallies. Now, people have always been passionate about their politics. But what we're getting from these people is the message that if they don't get their way, they're prepared to engage in violence and terrorist acts in order to get it. That violence is okay, it's just another tactic. And though most Americans would consider these people to be part of the lunatic fringe, the fact is that they represent the mainstream of the conservative movement. Now, I'm 63, been around for quite a while, and I've watched our political landscape change. When I first became politically aware, Eisenhower was president. He was a conservative who was respected by Americans of all philosophies. And there were conservatives, moderates, and liberals in both parties. And both parties were Americans first, who were willing to put aside their difference and work for the good of the country. And because of that, America accomplished great things. And we all knew where the fringes were. And let me tell you, people who were a lot less extreme than some of our, quote, mainstream conservatives today were considered to be on the fringe. I mean, you would have never heard these types of threats of violence coming from conservatives in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, you can't imagine Eisenhower or William F. Buckley talking about Second Amendment solutions, or Bob Dole or Ronald Reagan would never have suggested that if they didn't like on the results of an election, they should overthrow the government. And though they espoused a limited role for the government, they weren't completely paranoid about it and convinced that anything that government did was evil. I agreed with those people a lot, and even when I disagreed with them, I respected their views. And I didn't consider them to be odd or crazy in any way. But those kinds of conservatives are almost extinct nowadays. They have been almost all driven out of the Republican Party, and moderates, forget about it. They're gone. And so what's happening to the conservative movement is, well, one thing, it's not moving at all. Since people who actually think are either ostracized or exiled, they're not coming up with any new ideas. In the last election, did you hear anything new from the GOP? If Romney had any ideas of his own, he certainly wasn't about to say them. So they've become more radical and fanatic, but also the conservative movement is shrinking. They have a lot of passion, but fewer people buying into their philosophy. And that's part of the reason for their increasingly violent rhetoric. They know they've lost the grand argument and are increasingly desperate. Now that their ideas don't have any power, all they have left is threats and intimidation. When there's no room in your party for Dick Lugar or Michael Castle, then there's no room in your party for old-fashioned, true American, thoughtful conservatives. The kind that swing voters might consider voting for. And that certainly limits your chances in a national election. So they dream of a violent revolution and actually believe it might succeed, when the truth is they would be squashed like bugs and the rest of the country would stand and cheer. The idea that if you can't win the debate, you have the right to violence, that's not an American idea. That's an Al-Qaeda idea. It's the same thing that terrorists believe. And it was relegated to the fringes in America's past. And it has no place in America's future. Thanks for listening.